Now, to continue the discussion, I'm going to report about the major air pollutants. The table below shows the some common pollutants, pollution, their sources, and their effect on the environment. So, some of the pollutant is ozone, a gas that can be found in two places near the ground, the troposphere. It is a major part of smog. The harmful ozone in the lower atmosphere should not be confused with the protective layer of ozone in the upper atmosphere or stratosphere, which screens out harmful ultraviolet rays. So the ozone or zero 03 is a highly reactive gas composed of three oxygen atoms. It is both a natural and a man-made product that occurs in Earth's upper atmosphere, or what we call also a stratosphere, and the lower atmosphere, which is the troposphere. And depending on where it is atmosphere, ozone affects life on Earth in either good or in bad ways. So the ozone is a very important because it protects the earth from the harmful ultraviolet rays that comes from the sun. So without the ozone layer in the atmosphere, life on earth would be very difficult. Plants cannot live and grow in heavy ultraviolet radiation, nor can the planktons that serve as a food most of the ocean life. And as for human also, it can affect us. It can have a huge effect to us because it will more cause because nowadays there is a severe disease that can cause us by the sun for us human beings, such as cancers or skin diseases and etc. So the sources of ozone is not created directly but is formed when nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds mix in sunlight. So that is why ozone is mostly found in the summer. Nitrogen oxides come from the burning gasoline, coal, or other fossil fuels. There are many types of volatile organic compounds, and they come from sources ranging from the factories or to trees. So this only means that the ozone will come from or formed into the atmosphere and through chemical reactions between pollutants emitted from vehicles, factories, and industrial sources, fossil fuels, combustion, consumer products, evaporation of paints, and many other sources that is the doings of human beings. And some effects of this ozone near the ground can cause a number of health problems, and ozone can lead to more frequent asthma attacks in people who have asthma and can cause sore throats, coughs, and breathing difficulty. It may even lead to premature death. Ozone can also hurt plants and crops. So, uh, if human beings or animals or creators will have an exposure to ozone, can make it very difficult to breathe for human beings and also for animals, and can cause coughing and shortness of breath, just like asthma attacks. It can lead to worse conditions like damaged airways, chronic bronchitis, asthma, and emphysema. This is a lung diseases. Even if symptoms have disappeared, ozone can continue to damage the lungs. So next pollutant is carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is a gas that comes from the burning fossil fuels, mostly in cars. It cannot be seen or smelled. So, carbon monoxide or CO is an odorless, colorless gas formed by the incomplete combustion of fuels. When people are exposed to carbon monoxide gas, the CO molecules will displace the oxygen in their bodies and lead to poisoning. So some sources is carbon monoxide is released when engines burn fossil fuels. Emission are higher when engines are not turned properly and when fuel is not completely burned. Cars emit a lot of carbon monoxide found outdoors. Furnaces and heaters in the home can emit high concentrations of carbon monoxide too if they are not properly maintained. So basically, carbon monoxide is produced whenever a material burns. Homes with fuel burning appliances or attached garage are more likely to have plenty of carbon monoxide problems. Common sources of CO in our homes included fuel burning appliances and devices such as cloth dryers, water heaters, or even a gas stove. And the effects of this carbon monoxide makes it hard for body parts to get the oxygen they need to run correctly. Exposure to carbon monoxide makes people feel dizzy and tired and gives them headaches. In high concentration, it is fatal. Elderly people with heart disease are hospitalized more often when they are exposed to higher amounts of carbon monoxide. And in and if the carbon monoxide concentration is in the air is much higher, signs of poisoning may occur within 1 to 2 hours. For uh, and a very high carbon monoxide concentration can even kill an exposed individual within 5 minutes. So it is fatal. Other pollutant is nitrogen dioxide, a reddish brown gas that comes from the burning of fossil fuels. It has a strong smell at high levels. So the nitrogen dioxide or NO2 is a gaseous air pollutant composed of nitrogen and oxygen and is one of a group of related gases called nitrogen oxide or NOx. And nitrogen dioxide or NO2 forms when fossil fuels such as coal, oil, or gas or diesel are burned at high temperatures. So some sources of this is nitrogen for NO2 mostly comes from power plants and cars. Nitrogen dioxide is formed in two ways: when nitrogen in the fuel is burned or when nitrogen is in the air reacts with oxygen at a very high temperature. Nitrogen dioxides can also react in the atmosphere to from ozone, acid, rain, and particles. So the effect of these are high levels of nitrogen dioxide exposure can give people coughs and can make them feel short of breath. People who are exposed to nitrogen dioxide for a long time have a higher chance of getting respiratory infections. Nitrogen dioxides react in the atmosphere to form acid rains which can harm plants and animals. And this damages to human respiratory tract and can increase a person's vulnerability to and the severity of respiratory infections and asthma. Long-term exposure to high levels of nitrogen dioxide can cause chronic lung disease and can cause death. Next is particulate matter, solid or liquid matter that is suspended in the air. To remain in the air, particles usually must be less than 0.1 millimeter as uh, 0.0005 millimeter. Sources or particulate matter can be divided into two types: coarse particles and fine particles. Coarse particles are formed from sources like road dust, sea spray, and construction. Fine particles are formed when fuel is burned in automobiles and power plants. Some of the effects of this is particulate matter that is small enough can enter the lungs and cause health problems. Also for respiratory infections and diseases. Some of these problems include more frequent asthma attacks, respiratory problems, and premature health. Next is sulfur dioxide, a corrosive gas that cannot be seen or smelled at low levels but can have a rotten egg smell at high levels. So, sulfur dioxide or SO2 is the chemical compound with that is toxic gas and responsible for the smell of burned matches. It is released naturally by volcanic activity and is produced by product of copper extraction and the burning of sulfur-bearing fossil fuels. Some sources of this is sulfur dioxide mostly comes from burning coal or on oil in power plants. It also comes from the factories that make chemicals, paper, or fuel like nitrogen dioxide. Sulfur dioxide reacts in atmosphere to form acid, rain, and particles. So the effects of this sulfur dioxide or SO2 exposure can affect people who have asthma or emphysema by making it more difficult for them to breathe. It can also irritate people's eyes, noses, and throats. Sulfur dioxide can harm trees and crops, damage buildings, and make it harder to people to see long distance. So some of the uses for sulfur dioxide is it is used for many industries. It is used to manufacture sulfuric acid, paper, and food preservatives. Some example of workers at the risk of being exposed to sulfur dioxide, including the following: factory workers in the industries where it occurs as byproducts such as copper smelting or power plants. And it is also widely used in the food and drinks industries for its properties as a preservative and antioxidant. Whilst harmless to healthy person when used in recommended concentrations, it can also induce asthma when inhaled or ingested by sensitive subjects, even in high dilution. But also, as we can see here in the effects of this SO2, it is also severely irritating to the eyes, mucous membrane, skin, and respiratory tract, and can also cause you pulmonary edema or uh, acute airway obstruction. And when you inhale it or exposure to a very low concentration to sulfur dioxide can aggravate chronic pulmonary disease such as asthma. So next, the lead, a blue-gray metal that is very toxic and is found in a number of forms and locations. Lead is a chemical element which with the symbol Pb and atomic number 82. It is an element with a heavy metal that is denser than most common materials. Lead is soft and malleable, and also has a relatively low melting point. When freshly cut, lead is silvery with a hint of blue. It tarnishes to the dull gray color when exposed to air. And some sources of this is outside lead comes from cars in areas where unleaded gasoline is not used. Lead can also come from power plants and other industrial sources. Inside lead, paint is an important source of lead, especially in houses where paint is peeling. Lead is old Lead in old pipes can also be source of lead in drinking water. Lead is widely used for car batteries, pigments, ammunition, cable sheeting, weights for lifting, weight belts for driving, lead crystal glass, radiation protection in some solders. Lead is also widely used for compounds that have been used in wide variety of products found in an around our homes, including paint, ceramics, pipes, and plumbing materials, solders, gasoline, batteries, ammunition, and cosmetics. Some of the lead effect is high amounts of lead can be dangerous for small children and can lead to lower IQs and kidney problems. For adults, exposure to lead will increase the chance of having heart attacks or strokes. Next is toxic air pollutants, a large number of chemicals that are known or suspected to cause cancer. Some important pollutants in this category include arsenic, asbestos, benzene, and dioxin. Sources are each toxic air pollutant comes from a slightly different source, but many are created in chemical plants or are emitted when fossil fuels are burned. Some toxic air pollutants like asbestos and formaldehyde can be found in building materials and can lead to indoor air problems. Many toxic air pollutants can also enter the food and water supplies. The effect of these toxic air pollutants can cause cancer. Some toxic air pollutants can also cause birth defects. Other Other effects depend on pollutant but can include skin and eye irritation and breathing problems. Next is stratospheric ozone depleters, chemicals that can destroy the ozone in the stratosphere. These chemicals include the chlorofluorocarbons, halogens, and other compounds that include chlorine or bromine. Sources of stratospheric ozone depleters are used in air conditioners and refrigerators since they work well as coolants. They can also be found in cans and fire extinguishers. Other stratospheric ozone depleters are used in solvents in industry. And in when chlorine and bromine atoms come into contact with ozone in the stratosphere, they just destroy ozone molecules. One chlorine atom can destroy over 100,000 ozone molecules before it is removed from the stratosphere. And some effect of this, if the ozone in the stratosphere is destroyed, people are exposed to more radiation from the sun, uh, in the ultraviolet radiation. This can lead to skin cancer and eye problems. Higher ultraviolet radiation can also harm plants and human beings. And the main rule of stratospheric ozone layer is the naturally occurring gas that filters the sun ultraviolet ray radiation. This is typically regarded as good ozone since it reduces a harmful effect of ultraviolet or UVB radiation. A diminished ozone layer allows more radiation to reach the Earth's surface. So, Next is the greenhouse gases. Gases that stay in the air for a long time and warm up the planet by trapping sunlight. This is called the greenhouse effect. Because, because of the gases act like the glass in a greenhouse. Some of important greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. A greenhouse gas is a gas that absorbs and emits radiant energy within the thermal infrared range, causing the greenhouse effect. The primary greenhouse gases in the Earth's atmosphere are water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and ozone. And sources of carbon the sources of these are carbon dioxide is the most important greenhouse gas. It comes from the burning of fossil fuels in cars, power plant, houses, and industry. Methane is released during the processing of fossil fuels and also comes from natural sources like cows and rice paddies. Nitrous oxide comes from the industrial source and decaying plants. The effect of gas, the greenhouse can lead to changes in the climate of the planet. Some of the changes might include more temperature, extreme higher sea levels, change in forest composition, and damage to land near the coast. Human health might be affected by diseases that are related to temperature or by damage to land and water. And beyond that, this causes climate change by trapping heat, and they also contribute to respiratory disease from smog and air pollution, extreme weather, food supply disruptions, and increased wildfires are other effects of the climate change caused by greenhouse gases.